Alright, so this is my Psy-Frame B.A.G deck, B.A.G. That's for beta, alpha, and gamma. Those are the only Psy-Frames tuners that I'm using in the deck. And then of course you have Psy-Frame driver, which you need. If you add drive into it, you got D.B.A.G, right? D.B.A.G, D-B-A-G. But anyway, so I'm mainly focusing on the aspect of responding to monsters, because most decks don't. You'll run into some decks that aren't playing spells and traps all like that. So you don't really need the spells and trap version of the Psy-Frame tuners. There is another version I have which is for that scenario, but you have a 99% chance of your opponent summoning a monster, whether it be normal or special summon. You have a chance of your opponent attacking you with a monster, and you run into the scenario where your opponent will activate a monster effect. So obviously these tuners specifically react to monsters, which your opponent's going to pretty much have in their decks. So you should already know the effects of these cards, so I'm not going to run through their individual effects. Obviously beta, when your opponent attacks with a monster, you activate its effect. Alpha, when your opponent normal or specials, you activate its effect. And gamma, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can activate its effect and destroy the monster in the process. Beta also destroys the monster that attacked in the process of its special summoning. Then we have card D. Normal summon it, send it to the graveyard during main phase 1, draw 2 cards, and end your turn in the process. So this is your draw engine, so you can, make sure you have a good amount of hand traps, as it were, a good amount of Psy-Frames in your hand, so you can respond to your opponent plays. YUGIOH will help you recycle that, plus any of your Psy-Frame cards, tuners, and whatnot, so you can keep having responses. So that starts off obviously your infinite resource. There's a considerable amount of banishing in this deck, so you have Necrophasis to bring back anything that was banished, whether it be spells, traps, or monsters. So that comes in handy. That combos with pretty well with YUGIOH, because YUGIOH can add it from the graveyard back into your deck. Then you can normal summon it and bring back anything that's removed from play back into the deck, including YUGIOH himself, because anytime YUGIOH leaves the field, except if it's an XYZ material, but anytime it leaves the field, it will get banished. So you need Necrophase in order to bring it back into the deck, so you can keep infinitely recycling your monsters. YUGIOH also has another use, is when he attacks, he lets you send a monster from your deck or your hand to the graveyard. He gets 1,000 attack for each normal monster in your graveyard. You can get him up to 3,000 if you send all 3 of the Psy-Frame drivers to the graveyard. So that's a pretty nice little thing there. So he serves an extra benefit other than just for recycling. You can also turn him into a nice little beater. You got Psy-Frame Circuit, lets you synchro during your opponent's turn, and it's a very crucial part to the deck, so you want to make sure you get one onto the field and keep it on the field as long as possible, so you can synchro with your tuners and your drive frames every time it's your opponent's turn and make some really good plays, right? Monster Reincarnation lets you swap out anything in your hand that you don't really need. For example, drive frames, you get to discard them for Monster Reincarnation, so you can add back card D, which is what I typically do. But sometimes if you need a specific monster, specific Psy-Frame tuner, just grab one from the graveyard and add it to your hand, so you have it when you need it. You know what I mean? If you need your little battle hand trap, there you go. Beta. If you need your search, you got your alpha. Or if you need your little Veiler or your little effect counter, you got gamma. But typically I use it to get Monster card D back and just keep drawing, keep my resources up. Also useful in case I need to recycle something, in case there's a synchro in the graveyard and I didn't draw my Exodios, I can use Monster Incarnation, discard a Psy-Frame, for example, put my Black Rose back in my extra deck in case it was warninged, or Black Horn Heaven or something. Put it back in the extra deck so I can resynchro and reuse it, so it helps in recycling, keep that resources going, keep that infiniteness. Gotta optimize the extra deck, right? Stumbling, very useful, since you typically don't summon stuff to attack your opponent on your turn. It's always on your opponent's turn. You want to slow your opponent down, especially if your opponent's playing like pendulums or something. They exceed something, synchro summon, you know, stuff of that nature. You know, once your opponent normal summons, flex summon, or special summons a monster, switches to defense mode. This also applies to you as well. But obviously, you're doing this all during your opponent's turn, so it's not that big of a deal. The monster will be in defense mode on your opponent's turn, because on your turn, you switch it to attack mode and attack, right? Interesting note, Zeta and Omega's abilities, when they banish and come back, they're not special summoning back, they're just coming back, they're just returning back to the field, so they don't start a chain, so they don't trigger stumbling. So you banish Zeta in attack mode, he'll come back in attack mode. Along with the monster, you banish, you know, or card you banish for your opponent for either one of these two effects. So that's good to note. Twin Twister. Obviously, you can use it to discard anything you don't need. You know, like a Psy-Frame drive, since you can always bring them back from the graveyard, and pop 2 spells and traps on the field. So this is a good way of getting rid of multiple floodgates, or just getting rid of any, you know, back roll, so that way you can play the deck and do what you need to do. Solemn Notice, useful in case your opponent makes a really big play, like they summon Quasar or something. You can negate it with this, or monster effect, you can use this against that. Obviously, they pendulum summon, you can use this against that, obviously. So it's a really good card for 1500 life points cost, and it's a count trap, so it's hard to respond to unless it's with another count trap. Psy-Frame Overlord, really good card. It's your out to almost everything, because you banish a Psy-Frame monster from your hand, and then banish one face up, and then banish one card on the field. This card is pretty good, and the fact that you can banish, you know, even face up Psy-Frame monsters. So if you know, summon your, like a, let's say you summon a beta with driver, and then driver got bombers or something, and all you have is beta left. Instead of them getting banished during the end phase, use Psy-Frame Overlord, banish it, and banish something, so that way, you know, you can get something out of it. You can banish, you know, you can neg your opponent cards, which is always good. And this is a really good card because this is your out. You know, you can constantly get rid of back row with this. You can get rid of monsters with this. So really good card, obviously. And since you're banishing with stuff like that, obviously you have Necrophase to recycle all that whenever you're banishing. Also, Necrophase gets strong, gains 100 attack for each card return back into the deck, including your opponent's cards. So let's say you banish 5 of your opponent's cards and 5 of your own cards. That right there is 10 altogether, so you'll gain 1,000 attacks, so it'll be a 2200 level 4. Or if instead of 10 cards being banished, there's 20 cards banished, so you gain 2,000 attacks, so it's a 3,200 level 4. You know what I mean? So it can be a beefy monster. I've gotten this to like over 5,000 one time, so it is possible to make it to really strong. A couple times I got to 2,900. Burrow from a different dimension. Useful if you need something in the graveyard quickly and specifically. There might be some scenarios where somehow your Necrophases get banished. Like both of them got banished somehow. And then obviously Exodios can't do nothing about that. Almost any card in here can't do nothing about that. This was your main way of dealing with anything that was banished, and then both banished, right? But you have Burrow. You use Burrow, put them back in the graveyard, then Exodios back in the deck, then draw them later on during the duel, like maybe through the effect of card D, and then summon them, and then just keep going. So this is kind of to recover if you're ever in a scenario where necrofaces get banished. In case, because what if they're in the graveyard and somebody uses Rhapsody and Berserk and banish both of them, and then both you and your opponent both banish the top 10 cards of your deck. You know what I mean? But you get lucky enough that at least you still have that one burial. It's not perfect, because obviously if all three of these get banished, your ability to bring any of these cards back will be, very difficult, but it's better than not. And sometimes you might just need to burial something back into the graveyard. It was banished. So it kind of acts like another necroface, basically. And then you got Soul Charge. This is useful for when you're discarding. Let's say you discard Driver for Twin Twister, and then maybe you play 2 Twin Twisters. You discard a Driver and let's say a Gamma to the graveyard, hop 4 back rows, and then you have Soul Charge. You Soul Charge, bring back Gamma and Driver, and then go into Omega, and then use Omega's effect to randomly banish a card face up from your opponent's hand. So now you know what card that is, and then at the same time, he won't have it to use it on his turn. Then and you just go on from there. But of course, you can also just go into like a Hot Red play, or a Scar Right play. Whatever card you need. Maybe even make a Black Rose play if you use Alpha or Beta instead. You get the idea. So it's really good for helping you get multiple monsters on the field, especially if you already use Gamma's effect to bring out Driver, and then sync with a field spell and made an Omega. If you want to play more than one Omega, which you can if you want, change the extra deck up. You can Soul Charge, bring the 2 materials back, and make another Omega, and then you got 2 Omegas, constantly banishing 2 cards from your opponent's hand, slowing him down. And even if they manage to summon a monster, Stumbling will deal with that, will take care of that for you. And then your turn, the double Omegas come back, you can attack, deal some damage with that. Then main phase 2, banish them, and banish 2 more cards from your opponent's hand, and just slow them down and annoy them tremendously. And if you want to get a third one in there, get a third Psy-Frame Omega in there and just go crazy, right? Of course, we got Zeta. Zeta is useful in the fact that you can banish him and a face-up monster that will special summon, like Exceed monsters. Or this is useful against because the materials will detach and the materials will go graveyard, so you can banish something like a Sky Blaster, Maelstrom, Utopia, something of that nature, and just banish them and take away their materials and make them relatively useless. Under the right conditions, you could use this to take down Cyber Dragon Infinity. All you have to do is play a card. Your opponent will try to negate that card with Cyber Dragon Infinity. Let's say you activate Psy-Frame Overload, and he tries to use Cyber Dragon Infinity to negate it while you have Zeta. Then you can chain Zeta to Infinity's effect, banish Infinity, and that won't negate Infinity's effect. He still will get to counter the trap. It just, at least now you got rid of Infinity. Now Infinity won't have no more materials, and then he'll be gone until it's your turn. Then once your turn, Infinity will come back with no materials. He'll be 2100, you're 25, you can run him over, that kind of stuff. And hopefully you can run him over. You don't want to end up in a scenario where he'll try to activate his effect to steal you and make you into a material. Which of course you can chain and avoid that. But anyway. Also their Omega and Zeta's effect of banishing to banish something is an effect, not a cost. So if somebody chains like Veiler, or not Veiler, because you're more likely to do this on their turn, Phoenix Chain or something of that nature, or Skill Drain or whatnot, even Light Imprisoning, because this will activate and resolve on the field, will prevent it from actually doing its effect. Omega, Zeta's second last effect is, if this card's in your graveyard, you can target one other Psy-Frame card in your graveyard and return it to the and return him, Zeta, back into the extra deck, and then add that target to your hand. So this is a good way of getting back your Psy-Frame tuners back from the graveyard to your hand, or your field spell to the hand, so you can reuse it. You could get back the trap overload, but more likely you're going to use overload to search. So it's not. So it'll be banished. And use Necroface, of course, to bring it back into the deck, so you can keep using it, keep that infinite resource. Omega has two effects. During your opponent's standby phase, you can return a card that's banished back into the graveyard. This is, it's kind of like a pseudo version of Burrow from a different dimension, right? Because this is good for getting back anything. Like, you can use it to get back the trap, send it back to the graveyard so you can banish it and search again. You can use it to send Necroface, if it's banished for some reason, back into the graveyard, or any card that might be banished. Maybe some Psy-Frame monsters, Exodios, send it back to the graveyard so you can reuse it later on. And then it also has the effect that if this card is in your graveyard, you can target one other card in either player's graveyard and shuffle both of them back into both Omega and that card back into the owner's decks. Of course, you want to use this on yourself, so you can recycle your Solemn Notices, your Burials, your Soul Charges, your Twin Twisters, your Stumblings, your Monster Incarnations. Mainly, you want to recycle your spells and traps, your field spell and whatnot. Those are the things you want to recycle, because you already have Exodios and Monster Incarnation to reuse your monsters, so you don't need to recycle them. What you do need to recycle is your Stumblings, your Twisters, your Solemn Notice. Since those are your outs to stuff. So those are the things you want to recycle. But of course, this effect is useful if you want to get rid of something that's in your opponent's graveyard that's problematic, in case they have like a Stars Assault mode in the graveyard or something that's going to come back and be like, nope, I'll use my Omega's effect to get rid of that assault mode from the graveyard, and so that way you can't special summon during the end phase. So it's a good out for that. It's like your life transfer really good. You want to keep your life points up, since this deck is more of a reactive deck than a proactive deck. And the only time it goes proactive is after it reacts. So the opponent makes a play, you respond to the play, you counter the play, then you make a play, and then because now you have a play, then you can come at attack your opponent and start making moves. So until that happens, until your opponent makes plays that you can react to, they're more likely going to be able to do you a good amount of damage. So you want to get most of that back, most of your life points back. So once per turn, you can move from play one psychic type monster from your graveyard to gain 1200 attack. So that's pretty decent. So you use it every time it's your turn to gain 1200 and keep gaining life slowly but surely. So she's really useful for that. Also, you do place, Soul Charge, so gaining 1200 is really useful. And we also have Michael the Arch Lightsworn. You pay 1,000 to banish stuff with him, so being able to gain 1200 is useful for that. We have Yazi, Evil of the Yang Zing. He cannot be targeted by opponent's card effects, which is the only reason I have him. Because he's a 7-star, 2600 that can't be targeted by your opponent's card effects, which is very useful. It's useful against stuff like, Griddles, Magic Specters, Sky Blaster, 101, D-Prison, Regeki Break, Women Blast, BLS, anything that targets, what I mean? Yeah, you want something that can protect itself from being targeted, so he's a good generic 7-star. Why not? He does have an effect you could use, which is you can target one Yang Zing monster you control. He's a Yang Zing monster, and one card your opponent controls, and destroy them. So you can pop him in order to pop something else, just in case you need it, in case your opponent has a monster that's stronger than Yang Zhang, then Yazzie, just pop and get rid of that monster. Since you know you can always, monster reincarnate or YUGIOH Yazzie and remake him again later. So it's not a problem to pop him to get rid of something that's problematic. Black Rose Moonlight Dragon. This card is special summon or a level 5 or higher monster or monsters is special summoned to your opponent's side of the field. Target one special summon monster your opponent controls, return that target to the hand. So obviously this is useful if your opponent pendulum summons, then you target one of their level 5 and higher and bounce it back to the hand. Especially if that level 5 or higher is problematic, you want to get rid of it. This is a good way to counter, any synchro plays, any fusion plays, anything of that nature. They summon their big monster, you just bounce it away. So it's a pretty good defensive card. It's also good that if your opponent already has a level 5 or higher, and then you summon Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, you can get rid of that big monster right away. Then we got Arai's Meteor Burst Dragon. The only part of his effect that matters is your opponent cannot activate monster effects during the battle phase, which is the last line of his effect, which makes this is useful against Griddles, Yang Zings, Burning Abyss, anything of that nature. Any battle fader, gores, any battle hand traps. As long as there are monster effects, this can deal with that and make it where your opponent can't activate those effects during the battle phase. So very useful against Utopia. You can even just summon this, go into battle phase, and play something like a Compulse or something on like Stardust Assault mode. And since you're in the battle phase, they can't activate Assault mode's effect. So stuff like that's useful. It just depends on how you play. You know what I mean, right? Especially in this deck, you can make Meteor Burst Dragon, right, and then use the Psy-Frame Overload, but during the battle phase against something like Stardust Assault mode or Quasar, for example, right? Target those monsters with this card effect. Since they can't activate their effects during the battle phase, you can end up banishing them with Psy-Frame Overlord's ability. That's pretty cool, right? Michael, since the tuners and non-tuners in here are light, you can make Michael Lightsworn Lord. Arch Lord's Lightsworn. Anyway, once per turn, you can pay 1,000 life points to target one card on the field and banish that target, which is the only real part of the effect you're gonna use. This is, something you would do situationally. It's not something you'll want to summon first turn or anything of that nature. Unless you want to summon it first turn, and start milling the top 3 cards of your deck every turn to speed up the process, essentially cutting your deck almost in half. Hey, to each their own. It just depends on, your strategy and your plans. Especially if you already have some good stuff in your hand already, then you can go into, like Michael's effect. Well, you can't make him first turn. Obviously, you could make him during your opponent's turn. Then on your turn, at the end of your turn, you can use his effect, of course. But you get the idea. You can take advantage of milling stuff to the graveyard, especially if you have stuff like Monster Reincarnation. Let's say you milled the Psy-Frame Overlord, you could banish it, get its effect, and all that good stuff. Moving on, Black Rose, of course. A pretty good play is to summon this during your opponent's turn, especially when he has a lot of stuff on the field, and then just clear the field. Not a problem if you lose your field spell or your Psy-Frame Overload. One, you can use Overload to get back, to get a copy of the field spell from the deck to your hand, so it's not even a problem, and whatnot. And this deck, obviously recycles itself, so it's not a problem for you to lose some resources because you're going to gain more back anyway. The whole idea is to make your opponent lose. Your opponent's going to lose more than you because he doesn't have the strategy to regain his resources. So that's a really good play to make his Black Rose. Hot Red Dragon, useful for when your opponent has a whole bunch of monsters. You can pop them all at the same time if they're in attack mode, and then attack your opponent for 3,000. So that's what he's there for. For when your opponent swarms the field, you could just, minimize their field. Especially this is useful if you have him, and you have Stumbling, and your opponent Pendulum Summoning, and then you made Hot Red during your opponent's turn, then it's your turn, you activate his effect, get rid of all his Pendulum monsters, right? Then switch him to attack, deal 3,000, then it's their turn. And if they Pendulum, that's okay. All their Pendulum monsters will go defensible, so it's not a problem, right? So you have to worry about them attacking you or something like that, and then it's your turn, then you can just start, picking them off one by one. Let's see. Another card you could use that would be funny because of Stumbling is Red Dragon Archery, the regular one, his original form, right? Because his monsters will come out in defense. You have you have a regular Red Dragon Archery, and then you just keep attacking his defense monsters and just keep, his field clear. Yeah, you can do that. Another card you can use, which is a lot more useful, especially in the Stumbling scenario, is Scarwright. This card's name becomes Red Dragon Archery while face up on the field or in the graveyard, which is a really, really useful effect. Once per turn, you can destroy as many special summon monsters on the field whose attack less than or equal to this card's attack as possible, other than this card, of course. Then inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each monster destroyed. So obviously, your opponent pendulums, and then you can use this effect on your turn to pop all those monsters, and he'll take damage 500 for each of those monsters. And then if he pendulum summons again on his turn, Stumbling will switch them all to defense, and then you can use Scarwright's effect again and keep popping his monster, dealing damage. But also you can attack with a 3,000, and it'll just be lots of fun. You just could put your opponents in a burn loop, right, and just beat him even faster that way. So that's why he's also there. Thought Ruler, again, life points is important, especially this deck takes a while to get off the ground, as it were. It takes a while to get this deck running because your opponent has to make plays. You have to wait until they make moves before you can make moves. So having something like Thought Ruler to gain most of your life back that you might have lost is important, as well as he's a 2700 beater, and he could protect himself from spells and traps to target by just paying 1,000 life points. Not only can he protect himself, he could also protect any of your other psychic type monsters, which the Psy-Frames are, as well as the Synchros. Scrap Dragon. Never know when you might just need to pop something on your side field that you don't need. Like let's say you just want to pop Overlord, and then pop something your opponent has, and then get Overlord's effect and search something out. You know what I mean? To each their own. So it's a good card, especially you can pop every turn. Let's see. Since I really haven't done that trick yet. Okay, just making sure. So you can't overload into an overload, because then you could just like overload, pop it for scrap, pop something, add another overload, and then just every turn pop, 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 pop. You know what I mean, right? For like 3 turns, and then like necroface it all back into the deck and just start the loop all over again, right? That'd be cool, but that is not the case. But you can use it to search out any of your Psy-Frame monsters or field spell. Then we have Colossal Fighter. Useful, because even if he does special summon the opponent's turn in defense mode because of Stumbling, switch him to attack mode. He'll die, he'll come back, he'll die, he'll come back. And he gets 100 for each warrior in both players' graveyards. So if you go up against a warrior deck, this is a pretty useful monster because he could get pretty strong pretty easily. So that's why he's useful, right? And then Stardust is good for protecting your field spell, your stumblings, your your overload, just protecting your resources, as well as by it going to the graveyard, it allows you to be able to trigger your alpha, beta, and your gamma's effects if your opponent makes a play after the fact, right? So after you negate something and then they try to use a monster effect or something, you can respond to it with your cards. And start a spark to protect the field spell or your trap, protect your trap or your stumbling and whatnot, and just keep things moving. Plus it's nice 2500, and sometimes it just makes a good defense in case for some reason you don't have stumbling or any of your side frames for some reason. Of course, you need side frames to make it, but let's say you run out of resources somehow, shouldn't be able to, but in case you do, Start of Spark is pretty nice defense. Bring him on defense mode and just keep using his effect to make it where he can't die by battle or card effect, and he'll stay there long enough for you to make a comeback, right? And that's the end of the deck profile.